الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله هو الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله هو الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله هو الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله هو الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد
الله أكبر والله أكبر لا إله إلا الله والله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله والله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد
الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله هو الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله هو الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله هو الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله هو الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله هو الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله هو الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله هو الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله هو الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله هو الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله هو الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله هو الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله هو الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد
الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله والله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله والله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد
الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله هو الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله هو الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله هو الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله هو الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله هو الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله هو الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله هو الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا Muhammad wa ala ali wa ashabi ajma'in. Respected elders, parents, brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and Eid Mubarak to everyone. My name is Faida Crouch, and it's an absolute honor to welcome you all to the 37th TIP Family Eid Gah and our second online Family Eid Gah. More so in the midst of some of the most unusual times, a time that has impacted us immensely. It's a time to mourn the many we've lost, to a fight we've never been trained for, and to celebrate the victories. A time where we sacrifice the ones we love to a battle, a weaponless war. In a time of physical distancing, we hope to create an inclusive community to celebrate this Eid as a countrywide congregation in this online space. Inshallah, we'll be able to gather again next Eid under our tent as usual. We will live stream a family Jamaat. There are a number of different scholarly opinions on the validity of following a Jamaat online. And so we leave it to you to decide if or how you join the Jamaat to follow the Imam in Salah. So please participate in our program. When it's time for Salah, you may perform with our Imam online, or you can perform either the Salah, your Eid Salah, or 2 rakats of Salatul Duha on your own or with your family. So briefly, our program is as follows. We shall be addressed by our guest speaker, the lovely Nelisiwe Msomi. This will be followed by a summary of English, or a summary in English, of the Arabic khutbah to be delivered by the Imam. As a reminder, I'll go over how to perform the Eid Salah before we cross over to Imam Sheikh Salim. We shall then switch over to Umbulu, to the Imam and his Jamaat for the Salah, khutbah, and the Dua. This will be followed by a recording of our family Salatul Islam of Inayat Petka. We expect the formal program to finish by around 8:30, inshallah. Hopefully we keep to that time. Please join the Zoom meet and greet for a deeper discussion with our speaker, Nelisiwe, and to greet friends and enjoy a celebratory time and salawat and poetry, inshallah. If you have not registered for this event, you can do so now. The link is below in the YouTube description and on our Facebook page, as well as our Instagram. You can only join once you've registered. So upon registration, the link to join will be emailed to you automatically. TIP can be found on various social media platforms, like I've just mentioned. Search for us on Facebook at TIP Family Eid Gah and like our page. You can follow us on Twitter and on Instagram under the handle at TIP Family Eid Gah. Please do continue to support TIP with your generous community funding, as there are still costs in mounting an online program. The year 1994 has shown us one of the greatest changes in the history of our time in South Africa. The pandemic year 2020 has shown us that these changes were nothing but words on paper. This year has highlighted inequalities, injustices borne by the most vulnerable. One that continues to infect us all is the pandemic of racism. As a Muslim community, we are not immune despite the teachings of Islam and our beloved Prophet, on whom be peace. Our speaker today will address this issue. Our speaker, Nelisiwe Msomi, is a health journalist and a contributing author of a book called If It Be Madness, an anthology to honor the life and courage of Shamima Sheikh. She's also a former co-host of the Mercy and Contentment Show that aired on online radio station Salam Media, a show that profiled issues that Black Muslims in South Africa face and has an interest in studying race relations and feminist politics. The title of the talk today is Sawubona, I See You. We shall now cross over to Nelisiwe.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Eid Mubarak to you all. Thank you for joining us today, and I'd like to thank TIP for inviting me and honoring me with the privilege of addressing you today. My name is Nelisiwe Msomi. I'm from the east of Johannesburg, and I identify as a Zulu Muslim woman. I was asked today to focus on the pandemic of racism, informed by our historical pandemic of racism and the present COVID-19 pandemic that we face today. And inshallah, Allah will bring us relief from this pandemic. I call my speech Sawubona, I see you, because usually the greeting Sawubona in isiZulu is loosely translated as hello. But when you go deeper into the meaning of this greeting, it is saying that I see you, I recognize you as a human being, and I recognize your presence as a fellow human being. So now you may ask, because I was asked to talk about racism, that how do these two meet? How does Sawubona and racism meet? So my prime example would be when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran in Surah Hujarat, ayah 13, when he states that we have created you all in male and female and have made you nations and tribes so that you may recognize one another. And the most honorable of you in the sight of Allah is the most pious of you. And Allah is all knowing, all aware. So here Allah beautifully crafts this ayah and he says, he wants us to recognize one another. And he says, in his sight, meaning I see, the most pious, he recognizes the best of us are the ones who are pious. So our tools of recognition are our senses, our sight, our smell, our ability to feel and touch and to hear and taste. And for people without any vision difficulties, our eyes are the first tool that we use to see each other as human beings, to recognize each other as human beings. But when we fail to recognize each other as human beings, we then submit ourselves to Shaitan's will. We reject Allah's vision, Allah's greatness, and Allah's vision for us to recognize each other and see each other with our differences in skin color, race, and gender. And after seeing the first two differences, which is our skin color and class, we use and exploit these differences to judge people and box them and categorize them in ways that suits us. And this is how racism begins, because it starts with seeing. And because you see another human being of being in a lower status than you don't recognize them. In isiZulu, we say awumboni, and that means that you are undermining their human presence. For me, that's the first definition of racism, not recognizing someone's essence as a human being, not recognizing the differences that Allah has placed in us, because and that's how Allah wants us to honor each other, by recognizing and interacting with each other and accepting each other. And we see in the Quran how Allah speaks of the creation of Prophet Adam, alayhi salam, and Shaitan's rejection of Prophet Adam. And Allah in Surah Al-Hijr, in ayah 26, it says, and we certainly create men out of the clay and the essence of black mud. And then in the same surah at ayah 28, it says, and mention to them, O Muhammad, when your Lord said to the angels, I will create a human being out of clay from altered black mud. And then he talks about, then we know the conversation is quite a common story, but how Allah talks about how he blew into Prophet Adam the ruh, his spirit, and then commanded the angels to prostrate. And all of them prostrated besides Iblis, which is Shaitan. And he refused to prostrate. And Allah asked him, why do you not want to prostrate? And he says, and Shaitan says, I'll never prostrate to a human being who was created out of black mud. And this, of course, led to the banishment of Shaitan from being one of those who are close to Allah. And Shaitan then takes an oath to Allah and says he will mislead humankind until the day of judgment. So essentially, Shaitan is telling Allah that his vision that from what he saw, is to influence people, with his arrogance. And we see how arrogant he is. And when we look at Shaitan's arrogance, we see how that arrogance mimics racism. Because Shaitan rejected Prophet Adam from the basis of what he saw. And from what he saw, he thought that Prophet Adam is not good enough. And because he thought he was not good enough, he decided that what he saw makes it okay for him to disobey Allah. And this is essentially what racism is, because it is directly disobeying Allah because you feel you are better than somebody else who Allah has created. And one of my friends the other day was talking about how the example of how cattle in itself, and we are slaughtering today, you will have cows, black and white cows, brown cows, your Brahmins, there's a variety of them, but they still recognize each other as cows. They don't discriminate and think that they are better, And Allah has given us both desire and intellect as human beings, and there's a very famous saying that if you are a human, you have the ability of using your desire and intellect to get to the stage of an angel, because angels only have intellect. And or you can bring yourself down to the level of an animal, because animals don't have intellect, they only have desire. And so when we speak about racism, we should also look at how it's a lack of self-control. But moving on, I, as on the receiving end of racism, and as a Black Muslim woman who's struggled to describe what racism feels like for the longest of times. And one day it hit me that racism feels like I'm not seen, like I'm invisible, but you can see me, but you don't recognize me. And this is why when struggles of Black people in movements like Black Lives Matter wrongfully criticized as a racial competition or racial Olympics, because privileged people do not want to see don't want to see the struggles of Black people, So you have slogans like "All Lives Matter" when Black people are just merely fighting for the right to exist, when Black people are demanding justice for being killed, or Black people are just demanding a little bit more freedom, a little bit more room to breathe, And this is why we had campaigns where we say, "I can't breathe," because those are the last words that some Black Lives Matter comes from, when the deaths of Black men when they couldn't breathe because they were being killed by policemen. And a prime example is a recent example now, when we saw the policeman put his knee on George Floyd's neck. And at that moment, that policeman was erasing the human essence of George. That policeman had a perception of George as a criminal, a murderer, all of these perceptions that Black people are associated with, these racially derogative connotations, such as projecting Black people as monkeys. And we've seen it in South Africa, with the whole Penny Sparrow cases and other cases like that. And this is because these incidents happen because there's a failure to recognize Black people as humans. There's a failure to recognize Black people as equals, and there's a failure to recognize Black people as Allah's creation. And today we are gathered here, although virtually, to celebrate an Eid that is based on the foundations and actions of a Black woman, our mother Hajira. And like other Black people, her role in the rituals of Hajj are undervalued, Perhaps it's a perfect example of how race and gender interact, and her role of erasure in her part of it all. I mean, until this day, we recognize Prophet Ibrahim and Prophet Ismail in their roles in Hajj rituals and why we do perform Hajj. But we see Hajira, but we do not recognize her. We don't give her the accolades of her work. We have the Zamzam well today because of her tawakkul in Allah. So when we talk about her running between Safa and Marwa and the gushing of Zamzam, and we must always remember the tawakkul that she had when her husband left her alone, starving and a baby that is crying with no food, because he was commanded to do so. Prophet Ibrahim walked away, and she asked, like, "Where are you going?" And he didn't respond to her. And then she asked him, like, "Is this a command from Allah?" And he just nodded. And that for itself, you must remember that in itself was a sign of her tawakkul, her trust in Allah. Because it's the same tawakkul that we see in her when Prophet Ibrahim informs her that Allah has commanded that they sacrifice their son. She did not question, or like, why are you doing this, oh Ibrahim? Why can't you disobey Allah? She trusted in Allah. And we must remember that this is the woman who gave birth to the lineage of the Prophet, of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the beauty of Hajj is not just lying in the acts of jamarat and pelting the shaitan, but in itself is a self-cleansing process, where our past influences, we're rejecting our past influence and rejecting shaitan's influence on us, the same way as our father Ibrahim alayhi salam rejected shaitan's vision on the plains of Mina. And when Prophet Ibrahim rejected shaitan, he rejected shaitan's vision. And it's a lesson for us, because we often say that racism is something that's within our society, the legacy of apartheid within our Muslim communities. But it's up to us as Muslims to reject that vision of shaitan the same way our Prophet Ibrahim has. So, the famous saying that says, seeing is believing. And in this instance, seeing and recognizing a fellow human is part of believing. So I started by greeting by saying, Assalamu alaikum. A greeting that I have personally, and many other Black Muslims in South Africa, have often met with silence by fellow Indian or fellow Indian Muslims. And like I said, it's a shared Muslim experience, Black Muslim experience. And for the longest of times, it just felt like, your own brother or sister in Islam is rejecting you and not seeing you as an essence. And, Black people always tell you that how we constantly have to prove our Islam, because our essence as Black Muslims is not recognized by our fellow brothers and sisters. So my advice for today before I leave is, don't be trapped and controlled by Shaitan's vision. Ours as Muslims is to recognize one another. And what better way what better way is there to recognize one another but through the salam, or through Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, which is not just a greeting, but it is a dua for a fellow believer. So today I'd like to say that Sawubona, I see you all, I recognize you all. And shukran for listening to me today.
That was too short. Nelisiwe Msomi, Sawubona, I see you. What a profound talk. Thank you so much, Jazakallah khair, for joining us on the program today. I'm left speechless. I've been absolutely schooled. And I just want to rewind and watch this over and over and over again. But thankfully, YouTube, it will be available again for me and everyone else who's just missed Nelisiwe's talk. It'll be available on YouTube and on Facebook for you to watch later on. Thank you so much, Nelisiwe. Now, for me to introduce our Sheikh for the day, Sheikh Salim Banda studied theology and linguistics at the University of Medina in Saudi Arabia. He holds additional qualifications in project management and in human resources from 2 universities in South Africa. He is the director of the World Assembly of Muslim Youth in South Africa and holds a variety of leadership positions in other religious and educational institutions. He engages regularly in interfaith activities on behalf of the Muslim community and is active in humanitarian work. In his khutbah today, Sheikh Salim celebrates and praises the might and mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon mankind. Sheikh reminds us of the spiritual value of good deeds done during the 10 days of Hajj, as well as a reminder of the oneness of Allah, the collectivity of the Ummah, the high position bestowed upon our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam by the Almighty, as well as the singularity of our unchanged holy book. As we prepare for our Salah, I would like to remind us of the format of the Eid Salah. This year, we shall be performing according to the Hanafi school of law. First, we will all make our intention to perform 2 rakats of Salah for Eid al-Adha behind the Imam with 6 extra takbeers. The Imam will recite the first takbeer and fold his hands. He will then recite takbeer and drop his hands to his side. He will do this twice. He will then recite takbeer for the last time and fold his hands, followed by Surah Fatiha and the Surah, and the Salah will proceed as normal. In the second rakat, after the Surah Fatiha and another Surah, the Imam will make 3 takbeers and drop his hands to the side. On the 4th takbeer, he will proceed into ruku and the Salah will proceed as normal. Given the online format of the Eid Gah, we shall switch to another location with Sheikh Salim and his Jamaat shortly. If there is a poor connection, which I highly doubt we will have, we may use audio only. Should we lose connection at any point, please pray your 2 rakats with your family and rejoin us thereafter for a closing dua. You may now take your position on your musallas as we will begin the Salah shortly. Sheikh Salim, we now cross over to you.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Malik Yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. تبارك الذي جعل في السماء بروجا وجعل فيها سراجا وقمرا منيرا وهو الذي جعل الليل والنهار خلفة لمن أراد أن يذكر أو أراد شكورا وعباد الرحمن الذين يمشون على الأرض هونا وإذا خاطبهم الجاهلون قالوا سلاما والذين يبيتون لربهم سجدا وقياما والذين يقولون ربنا اصرف عنا عذاب جهنم إن عذابها كان غراما إنها ساءت مستقرا ومقاما والذين إذا أنفقوا لم يسرفوا ولم يقتروا وكان بين ذلك قواما. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين قل يتوفاكم ملك الموت الذي أكفر بكم ثم إلى ربكم ترجعون ولو ترى إذ المجرمون ناكسوا رؤوسهم عند ربهم ربنا أبصرنا وسمعنا فارجعنا نعمل صالحا إنا موقنون ولو شئنا الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر السلام عليكم ورحمة الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد الحمد لله الذي يرزق من يشاء بغير حساب الحمد لله الذي يرزق من يشاء وهو القوي العزيز الحمد لله الذي إذا ناديته ربك وإذا توكلت عنه آفاك وإذا أرسلته كافاك. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله الملك الملوك الحي القيوم، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله بالحق بشيرا ونذيرا إمام الذاكرين، أفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله، الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد. عباد الله، أوصيكم وإياي بتقوى الله فقد فاز المتقون. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله، الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد. يقول عز من قائل: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله، الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد. قال تبارك وتعالى: يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. الله أكبر الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله، الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد. قال مصطفى صلى الله تعالى عليه: لكل قوم عيد فهذا عيدنا. الله أكبر الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله، الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد. عباد الله، أهنيكم بعيد الأضحى المبارك، بارك الله فيكم وتقبل الله منا ومنكم. أهنيكم بعيد الطاعة، بارك الله فيكم وتقبل الله منا ومنكم. أهنيكم بعيد التوحيد، بارك الله فيكم وتقبل الله منا ومنكم. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله، الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد. عباد الله، واعلموا أن ربكم واحد ودينكم واحد ونبيكم واحد وكتابكم واحد، فأنتم أهل التوحيد، سائلين مولى أن يجعلنا وإياكم من أهل التوحيد. الله أكبر الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله، الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد. أحبة الأعزاء، الله لطيف بالعباد. يومكم هذا يوم العظيم، يوم النحر، أسأل الله تبارك وتعالى أن يتقبل منا ومنكم. الله أكبر الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله، الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد. يقول تبارك وتعالى: إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر. الله أكبر الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله، الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد. بارك الله لنا ولكم في القرآن العظيم، ونفعنا وإياكم بآياته وذكر الحكيم. أقول ما تسمعون، أستغفر الله لي ولكم ولجميع المؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله، الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده الملك الملوك الحي القيوم، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله بالحق بشيرا ونذيرا إمام الذاكرين صلوات ربي وسلام عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. الله أكبر، الله أكبر، الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله، الله أكبر، الله أكبر ولله الحمد. الله أكبر، الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله، الله أكبر، الله أكبر ولله الحمد. قال تبارك وتعالى: وما كان محمد أبا أحد من رجالكم ولكن رسول الله وخاتم النبيين. الله أكبر، الله أكبر، الله أكبر، الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله، الله أكبر، الله أكبر ولله الحمد. وقال تبارك وتعالى: هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين. الله أكبر، الله أكبر، الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله، الله أكبر، الله أكبر ولله الحمد. يقول تبارك وتعالى: إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. وقال تبارك وقال مصطفى صلى الله تعالى عليه: من صلى علي واحدة صلى الله عليه به عشرة. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما صليت على سيدنا إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. روض اللهم الخلفاء الراشدين وعشر المبشرين بالجنة أبو بكر وعمر وعثمان وعلي وعن سائر الصحابة والتابعين لهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. الله الله في أصحابي، الله الله في أصحابي، لا تتخذوهم قرضا من بعد، فمن أحبهم فبحب أحبهم ومن أبغضهم فببغض أبغضهم. اللهم ربنا أعز الإسلام والمسلمين، اللهم ربنا أعز الإسلام والمسلمين وانصر المجاهدين الذين يجاهدون في سبيلك في كل مكان. اللهم ربنا انصر المجاهدين الذين يجاهدون لتكون كلمتك هي عليا وكلمة الذين كفروا هي السفلى. لا إله إلا أنت يا حي يا قيوم يا عزيز يا أكرم الأكرمين. لا إله إلا أنت يا حي يا عزيز يا أكرم الأكرمين. عباد الله، إن الله يأمركم أن تؤدوا أمانات إلى أهلها وإذا حكمتم بين الناس أن تحكموا بالعدل. إن الله عيما يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. فاذكروا الله يذكركم وادعوه يستجب لكم. الله أكبر، الله أكبر، الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله، الله أكبر، الله أكبر ولله الحمد. وقولوا آمين وأنتم بخير. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وبارك وسلم. اللهم ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. اللهم ربنا أعنا على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك. اللهم ربنا آت نفوسنا تقواها وزكيها وأنت خير من زكاها أنت وليها ومولاها. اللهم ربنا اشف مرضانا ومرضى المسلمين واغفر موتانا وموتى المسلمين. اللهم ربنا إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اللهم ربنا إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اللهم ربنا اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم يا حي يا قيوم يا عزيز يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم ربنا اشف مرضانا ومرضى المسلمين واغفر موتانا وموتى المسلمين. اللهم ربنا اغفر لهم وارحمهم وسكنهم في الجنة واجعل قبورهم روضة من رياض الجنة يا حي يا قيوم يا عزيز يا أكرم الأكرمين. اللهم يا الله أنت ربي لا إله إلا أنت يا عزيز يا أكرم الأكرمين. لا إله إلا أنت يا حي يا قيوم. لك الحمد يا الله، لك الشكر يا الله. لا إله إلا أنت يا حي يا قيوم يا عزيز يا أكرم الأكرمين. Oh, Ya Allah, you have beautiful names and beautiful attributes. Oh Ya Allah, You are Allah, there is none worthy of worship except You, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Oh Ya Allah, You are Allah, there is none worthy of worship except You, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, we ask You to forgive our shortcomings, Ya Rabbil Alameen, to grant us the tawfiq to live and die as Muslims, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, unite us with those we love in Jannah to Firdaus, Ya Rabbil Alameen. We ask You for Jannah, the best of Jannah, Ya Akram Akrameen. Ya Allah, for all those who are sick, Ya Allah, grant them shifa al-kamila. Ya Allah, those who are sick, grant them shifa al-kamila. All those who are sick, Ya Allah, grant them shifa al-kamila wa ajila, Ya Akram Akrameen. Ya Hayy, Ya Qayyum, Ya Aziz, Ya Akram Akrameen. Ya Allah, Ya Allah, You are Allah, there is none worthy of worship except You. Ya Allah, have mercy and be gentle on this ummah, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, be gentle on the ummah of our beloved Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ya Hayy, Ya Qayyum. Ya Aziz, Ya Akram Akrameen. Ya Allah, unite our hearts and purify our hearts, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Grant us the tawfiq to live as Muslims, Ya Rabbil Alameen, to follow the teachings of Islam, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, as we sacrifice today, Ya Allah, we ask You to grant us the tawfiq to sacrifice that which is so dear to our hearts, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, grant us the ability to sacrifice racism in our communities, Ya Rabbil Alameen. It starts with us, Ya Allah. I ask You, Ya Allah, to grant us the ability to sacrifice our pride, Ya Allah. It starts with us, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, grant us this tawfiq to sacrifice jealousy, Ya Allah. It starts with us, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, grant us the tawfiq to sacrifice, Ya Allah, any form of our weakness that draws us away from You, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, we ask You to grant us the tawfiq to sacrifice racism, Ya Allah, to make us see each other, recognize each other, support one another, and inspire one another, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Oh Ya Allah, accept our du'as, Ya Rabbil Alameen. For all those who are sick, Ya Allah, grant them shifa al-kamila. All those who are sick in different homes, Ya Allah, grant them shifa al-kamila. All those who are sick in different hospitals, Ya Allah, grant them shifa al-kamila. Ya Allah, there is none with the worship except You, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Mentioning Your name, Ya Allah, is pure. We ask You, Ya Allah, to cure us, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Those who are sick and they know they are sick, Ya Allah, grant them shifa. Those who are sick and they do not know that they are sick, Ya Allah, grant them shifa. Oh, Ya Allah, accept our du'as, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Accept our du'as, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Accept our du'as, Ya Rabbil Alameen. رحمنا الله فينا من يصلي بالليل وناس نيام. رحمنا الله فيها من يأمر بمعروف لوجهك الكريم. رحمنا الله فيها من يطعم الفقراء والمساكين والأيتام حبا لك يا الله. اللهم ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. اللهم ربنا أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم ربنا عفو عنا يا حي يا قيوم. اللهم ربنا عفو عنا يا حي يا قيوم. اللهم ربنا عفو عنا يا حي يا قيوم يا عزيز يا أكرم أكرمين. اللهم ربنا لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا. أنت الذي تجعل الشيء إذا شئت سهلا. اللهم ربنا احفظنا من كل البلاء. اللهم ربنا احفظنا من كل البلاء. اللهم ربنا يمن كتابنا ويسر حسابنا. اللهم ربنا جعلنا من أهل الجنة يا حي يا قيوم يا عزيز يا أكرم أكرمين. اللهم ربنا اجعلنا من أهل القرآن يا حي يا قيوم. اللهم ربنا اجعلنا من أهل القرآن يا حي يا قيوم يا عزيز يا أكرم أكرمين. Ya Allah, accept our du'as, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, accept our du'as, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, accept our du'as, Ya Allah. Our struggles are real, Ya Allah, but Your promise is true, Ya Rabbil Alameen. You say, call on me and I will respond to you. Ya Allah, You say, take a step towards me and You respond to us, Ya Allah. Grant us eyes which cry for Your sake, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Grant us nafs that is contained by Your blessings, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Grant us a dua which You respond to, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, make us among those who make a dua and You respond to that dua, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Make us among those who cry to You, Ya Allah, and You wipe their tears, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Make us among those who turn to You, Ya Allah, sincerely in dua, Ya Rabbil Alameen. On this day, Ya Allah, accept our actions, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Unite our hearts, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Grant us the tawfiq to live and die as Muslims, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Make the day we die, Ya Allah, the best of our days, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Take us away when you're happy with us and not sad with us, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, take us away when you're happy with us and not sad with us, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, grant us the tawfiq, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Protect us from the adab of Qabr, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Protect us from the adab of the grave, Ya Rabbil Alameen. And make the day of Qiyamah the best of our days, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Grant us the tawfiq to look at you, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Grant us the tawfiq to look at you, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, do not take us away from this dunya when you are not happy with us, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Grant us imanul kamila, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Grant us the tawfiq to live and die as Muslims, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Grant us the tawfiq to be among those who make a dua which we respond to, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Do not reject our duas, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, racism is real, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, racism is real, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Make us custodians of activism, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Make us by our actions and our ways, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Be true to eradication of racism in our communities, Ya Allah. Make us the ambassadors of light where there's darkness, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ambassadors of provision where there's scarcity, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ambassadors of clarity where there's suspicion, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ambassadors of clarity where there's confusion, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ambassadors of love where there's hate, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ambassadors of knowledge where there's ignorance, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ambassadors of knowledge where there's ignorance, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Make us the light in this darkness, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, grant us the tawfiq to see our kids achieve their milestones of their lives, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, grant our kids the addiction of the Quran, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Protect them from any form of addictions, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, you know our needs, fulfill our needs, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, we are standing before your doors of mercy, Ya Rabbil Alameen. We ask you to open the doors of mercy for us. Ya Allah, open the doors of provisions for us. Ya Allah, open the doors of health for us. Ya Allah, open the doors of forgiveness for us. Ya Allah, open the doors of unity for us. Ya Allah, open the doors of unity for us, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Hayy, Ya Qayyum, Ya Aziz, Ya Akram Akramin. Ya Allah, our hearts are weak. Strengthen them, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Our sight is weak. Ya Allah, strengthen them for us, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Our resolve is weak. Strengthen us, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, you know us better than anyone knows us, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Forgive us, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Forgive us, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Make us among those you have forgiven, Ya Allah. Make us among those you have forgiven, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, grant us journey with the day of Qiyamah, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Bless us with our books, our accounts, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, what we have forgotten, Ya Allah, remind us, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, whatever we have forgotten, Ya Rabbil Alameen, forgive us, Ya Rabbil Alameen. We come to you with something that is like a swallow. Ya Allah, accept from us, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Perfect our swallows, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Make us among those who pray, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, all those who are sick, we Allah, grant them shifa, Kafira, Ya Hayy, Ya Qayyum. Ya Allah, we have lost those who are dear to us. Grant them Firdaus, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, our teachers who have taught us, Ya Allah, who have passed on, Ya Allah, have mercy upon them. Have mercy upon them, Ya Allah. Have mercy upon them, Ya Allah. Have mercy upon them, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, have mercy upon all of us, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Protect us from the coronavirus, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Those who are battling with any form of illness, Ya Allah, grant them shifa al-kamila. Grant them shifa al-kamila. Grant them shifa al-kamila. All those who are unjustly ill-treated, Ya Allah, have mercy upon them. support them. Be gentle on the Ummah of beloved Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ya Allah, Ya Latif, be gentle on this Ummah, Ya Rabbil Alamin. Be gentle on this Ummah, Ya Rabbil Alamin. Be gentle on this Ummah, Ya Rabbil Alamin. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وأصحابه وسلم سبحانك غفرانك ربنا إليك المصير برحمتك يا أرحم.
Jazakallah Sheikh Salim for the beautiful dua. As always, you always deliver and always bring everyone to tears. We'd like to apologize for losing visual on Sheikh Salim's dua. And then we'd also like to apologize to our deaf community for our technical issues with our interpreter. So that brings us to the end of our program. Firstly, we'd like to thank our speaker, Nelisiwe Msomi, for joining us and granting us the time and for delivering such a thought-provoking and amazing talk. To be honest, I think it deserves a Pulitzer Award. And then we'd like to thank you, our congregation, for joining us this morning in our Eid Gah. And then thanks to ANFARM for supporting us right through. I know Louis, we've given Louis a lot of gray hair during this time. We thank you, Louis. And to everyone in the background, in TIP, our TIP team does a phenomenal job at putting this together and working together to bring you this program every year. So Jazakallah khair, Jazakallah to you. For those of you who haven't registered for the TIP meet and greet after this program, you can do so now. You can do that by looking in our description just below in our YouTube. If you're streaming from our Facebook, you can scroll down and you'll find our link there, or Instagram, you'll find it in our bio. You click on the link, you register, and it will automatically give you an ID to join us in the meet and greet, where we can discuss the talk with Nelisiwe Msomi and everyone else. Jazakallah khair. From us at TIP, we wish you Eid Mubarak. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Ya Nabi, Salam alayka, sending peace upon the prophets. Ya Rasul, Salam alayka, peace upon all of the messengers. Ya Habib, Salam alayka, beloved Prophet Muhammad, Salawatullah alayka, peace to you through Allah's angel. Salawatullah alayka. Hazrat Adam, Bibi Hawa, Hazrat Nuh او حضرت یحییٰ، حضرت ابراہیم او موسیٰ، حضرت اسماعیل او عیسیٰ، یا نبی سلام علیکہ، sending peace upon the prophets. Ya Rasool, salam alayka, peace upon all of the messengers. Beloved Prophet Muhammad, Ya Habib, salam alayka, peace to you through Allah's angels. Salawatullah alayka. جب محمد کا نام آتا ہے، رحمتوں کا پیام آتا ہے، جب محمد کا نام آتا ہے، رحمتوں کا پیام آتا ہے، لب ہمارے درود پڑھتے ہیں، لب ہمارے درود پڑھتے ہیں، دل ہمارے سلام کرتے ہیں، یاد کرتے ہیں تم کو شام و سحر، یاد کرتے ہیں تم کو شام و سحر، بے سہارے سلام کرتے ہیں۔ صبا تو مدینے جا کے، صبا تو مدینے جا کے کہنا خدا را آقا لے لو سلام اب ہمارا، آقا لے لو سلام اب ہمارا۔ صبا تو مدینے جا کے، صبا تو مدینے جا کے کہنا خدا را آقا لے لو سلام اب ہمارا، آقا لے لو سلام اب ہمارا۔ سب انبیاء کے امام تم پر ہو لاکھوں سلام، روزے پہ آئے غلام، پڑھتے ہیں یہ صبح و شام، روح نکلے پڑھتے پڑھتے، روح نکلے پڑھتے پڑھتے، کلمہ تمہارا آقا لے لو سلام سلام اب ہمارا صبا تو مدینے جا کے صبا تو مدینے جا کے کہنا خدا را آقا لے لو سلام اب ہمارا آقا لے لو سلام اب ہمارا.